All right, we're back.
Okay, cool. Technology.
So, how long did you end up total doing in the Marine Corps?
So I did right at 13 years. And it's one of those things that a lot of people ask me, oh, why'd you get out, or what happened? Why didn't you go X number? And there was a lot of contributing factors, but I look at it as this way: it was God's plan. It was time. I was an instructor, and it was time for me to move on and do other things. And you know, I I never I never will ever bash the Marine Corps and how they operated and that kind of stuff. It was just times were changing, and as I'm sure in a lot of scenarios, and it was time for me to move on
Yep.
and do other.
When it's time, you know.
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
So let me ask you this: tell me how especially for military, and it happens a lot in first responders too. The transition to civilian life. How did that, go for you?
So for me, fortunately, it wasn't bad at first, and I'll say that because I got a job working in Maryland, working on the B-22s with a lot of prior military guys. I worked for DynCorp,
Hmm.
and most of those guys that worked there all had been in, I mean, some of them I was in the Marine Corps with, and we all kind of gravitated towards that time frame. They were doing so there in at Pax River, they were doing the test and evaluation of the V-22, and we tested like if they wanted to add a new component to the aircraft or they wanted to do something like that, we got with the engineers. We had some input on it. They asked us questions. We guided them. We worked on the aircraft, and then we'd take them out and see if they would operate under certain conditions. So that part of it wasn't bad. And then I got a job at Lockheed Martin out in Clovis, New Mexico, working with the Air Force guys. So I was still around that military environment. I was still around that structure. Even when I worked at DynCorp, we worked on base. I lived on base. Um, so it wasn't that bad at that point that I thought. I think the biggest factor is when I moved from away from that and I came to Oklahoma and I started working for the state. That's when I started noticing things were different. Working at the Department of Veterans Affairs, you still are around a bunch of military people, but you get to see the civilian side of things. You get to see how people operate. It's not, I don't know. It's one of those things where you feel like, what are these people doing? Why are they doing it this way? Why are they not,
Hmm.
type of thing? And
Typical government, you know.
yes. So and when I was in that position at ODVA, I was a veterans representative on the claims and benefits side. So I got to see these guys that were transitioning from the military into civilian life, and I seen some of the hardest factors and situations because these guys could not handle dealing with that. I mean, a lot of people don't understand that guys join the military because they're somewhat have structured lives, or they need that structure in their life. People that last and go a long time in the military, they they need that structure. They need that guidance in a sense. And I don't mean that in a negative way. It's just how it is. And
Kind of how they grew up.
yeah, and I don't know because I haven't experienced. So I don't know like a guy that only did 4 years. I don't know if that transition is as difficult as someone that did, 15, 20 years is. But I do know that there's not a lot of programs out there that help those guys, even in getting jobs and things like that. Yeah, they put you through these classes, but you go online, you sign up for this to look at your hometown or your home state and see where, what job is there or what's going on. But there's nobody here with open arms, really.
Hmm.
Even for the spouses and things like that. And that, fortunately, Erica had kind of that situation. She worked here and then moved out there to North Carolina with me, and then we came back, so she kind of knew the people that was around. But me coming back to Wagner, I didn't know hardly anyone. I did, but I didn't. You
It
know,
had changed.
yeah, all you guys were gone. Everybody was out, and so it was tough, and it still is tough sometimes to bond into that. And
We could talk about Wagner a whole 6 hours.
yeah, we could have a whole new episode of that situation. But anyways, as far as that goes, is the transitioning period of it. There's just not a lot of programs out there, and
So
these
what? So what do you think they could do better?
I really honestly think that there should be a state funded program that helps military, law enforcement, even guys getting out of prison. I mean, I say it all encompasses one organization that helps specifically with transitioning and coming back and having a place that you can go to. They bring people there to do job interviews. You don't have to go to the job. And I know some people say, oh, that might be lazy, but let me tell you, like being writing a resume and being in the military and going to a job interview, a lot of times you don't know what to say or how to say it or where you should be, you know?
Yep. And obviously, it's not as extreme on the law enforcement side, but like, after being in law enforcement for 10 years and getting out for, a couple years, like, it's just a different environment, completely different. I mean, stuff that you might joke around with your buddies at, on a call or after a call that, like, somebody that's never been in law enforcement or the military, like, they wouldn't get it and they just kind of look at you like you have three eyes. And like, or, you're like, hey, like, let's go get this done. And, on their side of things is, well, we got to fill out 18 papers first to get permission. And like, and we're used to just going and getting it done,
Yeah.
and it's a challenge. And I'm with you. Like, there's got to be a better way of doing things. Cause you see, I mean, how often do you go in Tulsa or any bigger city for that matter, and you see homeless veterans? And they're left behind, and it's not right.
Yeah. And it's a tough scenario because some of that is self-induced from those guys, and I say that with confidence because I've seen it. I mean, that was my job, is to go to those homeless camps and go to those homeless programs and try to advocate for those guys and bring them in. So there's definitely a fine line of where that needs to be. The states do horrible, and I've talked to some of these, like Kevin Hearn's office and those, and just like people that I feel like could make a difference. When it really comes to it, it's just a scratch and sniff type thing. They're just wanting to make it look good, essentially, I guess is what you could say, and unfortunately, I'll say this too, there's a lot of veteran programs out there that don't really care about veterans. They care about themselves, and even though they might be a nonprofit, they're still profiting in some way off veterans' backs. And it's just terrible to have that. So to answer that question, I definitely think that the state should have a state-run program that you can go to. And even if they did mid points, like, okay, we have an office in Tulsa, we have an office in Oklahoma City, and an office in Lawton type thing, you can go to those. A guy will drive, or a girl will drive to those areas and figure out how to get a job or where they can go for a job type thing.
Well, and it's different. Like, my mom worked for the workforce agencies, and I know they had veterans programs in there, but it's probably not easy for somebody that's so used to structure and discipline, and never really had to write a resume in their life, to go in there and deal with people that don't know anything about them for the most part.
Yeah.
And like, if they're dealing with somebody that's familiar with military people and like how they operate and what they expect, like, I think that transition would be a little bit easier.
And I say this too, is a lot of these programs, they're built around the homeless community. So pride comes into play. A guy that just got out of the military has too much pride to go into a place like that and be looked at like that and try to know who to ask questions to or know how to navigate it. You know what I'm saying? And those programs are good, but there's just not enough programs for that.
Do you think I wonder if there could be something implemented, like, prior to completely exiting the military, if they would ever implement an outboarding program, not an onboarding program, but like, this is what they expect of you in the civilian world. Like, This is how you write a resume. You know, do mock interviews,
Well, so
build life skills.
they do that for it's a week. It literally is a week long, and this is back when I got out, so I can't speak for how it is now. Now I think they do some kind of program online, which is even crazier to me. But
Yeah.
back then, it was a week long. You went to like the first 2 days of the class were just like, okay, get online, sign up for your state's programs and see what there is and do this. And then you write a resume, and they teach you how to they teach you the basics of like military lingo versus civilian lingo, and not what to put in there, and that type of stuff. And then you dress up one day, and then that's it. It's not really, like you said, I really truly think there should be like a 6-week period. Like, okay, in 6 weeks I'm supposed to be EAS and getting out of the military. I know that I have to go to this program, and these programs take you through the steps of, okay, this is the first step. Let's look at VA benefits and VA situations in where you plan to go back to. Because most people at that time, they have a pretty good plan of where they're going to go. And then, let's work on writing a resume. Let's work on how to speak to civilian people in job interviews and things like that. And then let's learn most military people know how to dress, formally and stuff like that. But I say that, I don't know about these kids these days. Sometimes we go back to base sometimes, and I'm like, good lands, man, we would never get caught out in sweats, that type of things. And then just continue that process, and the success rate, I think, would be a lot better if, and then, like I said, it would make it easier if you had a program for each state had a program where you could go to one of these offices, and they had, say they had JB Hunt there. Hey, this is how you can, because a lot of guys, they get their CDLs while they're in the military, driving 7 tons and things like that. So, hey, you're good to go. Come take our test, whatever it is, and you'll have a job. Even dealing with the college aspect, a lot of, especially when I was coming through, a lot of it was like, okay, do this and then go to college type thing. Oh, you're working to go to college. Well, in the aviation world, there's a lot of guys that don't have degrees, and they're AMPs, and they are way up here on the totem pole. And
Yeah, and why would they? I mean, like they're, and I have this discussion with everybody. I'm working on my doctorate, so like I love education, but education doesn't have to be in a formal degree setting. Like you can learn in any environment. It's what you put into it and take into it.
And a lot of times it's who the instructor is and how they instruct. You know what I'm saying?
Wholeheartedly. We actually have been dealing with a guy we're trying to get up to Oklahoma to come teach a law enforcement class, and like this guy's just a wizard with like PowerPoints, and like his big thing is that he doesn't want you to sit there and do death by PowerPoint. And like when he does use PowerPoint, it's not just text. He'll put in pictures, and like he may just put a picture of like one thing on the screen, but it's to get your mind thinking like outside the box, and like not just sitting there saying, "Oh my god," because you know how it is. If you're sitting there watching a PowerPoint for 8 hours, you tune out after about 30 minutes, and you're playing on your phone the other 7.5. Like
definitely, yeah.
And I agree. The instructor makes a lot of what you learn. I fully believe college isn't for everybody, but you got it's what you put into it at the end of the day. Like if you want to go to college, great, put your effort into it. If you want to go to trade school, put your effort into it. If you want to go to, like Boeing and work there and, learn all their stuff, like that's an in-demand deal. Like that's awesome. Like there's no knocking it in my opinion.
Yep.
But it's just, you got to put some effort in too. It's just.
And that's what I tell a lot of these young kids that don't know a direction. I say, go to the military, learn I know how to work on aircraft without, I graduate in May from college, but it took me all this time to get to that point. And my degree is going to be aviation maintenance, management. But it's just one of those things that you go to the military and get you. I mean, you can learn how to work on diesels. You can learn how to be a welder. Yeah, there's a ton of things that you can get in the military and come out and get a job just like that and no problem. And I think a lot of, like you said, a lot of people back when we were younger, I think the main focus was, oh, let's go to college. You need to go to college. You got to have that, and we see where we're at with that nowadays. Like you said, I don't knock that situation, but we see where people are with education these days. To me, I mean, you got people that have kids are graduating high school with almost, I mean, they already have their associate. Some of these kids are graduating with bachelor's degree. They
Mm-hmm.
never step foot in an office door, and to me, what is that teaching our younger generation? What are they're learning how to read a book that they're not going to really follow, or they're not going to understand when it comes to time to how to, I'm sure you know the black belt, Sigma Chi, or what is that, like yellow belt and black Six Sigma stuff. They taught us that, and that stuff, man, it's incredible how much I learned off of that kind of stuff. But those are technical fields that a lot of people don't understand, that that's where you want to go. And I know we're getting off on that sidetrack,
Yeah.
but I think that's the thing too with transitioning veterans and things like that is that they don't realize what their potential is on that side of things. Like you have this background of something you did in the military for how many ever years. Take that to the civilian world and go with it, run with it.
Yeah, and you got to believe, a lot of times you got to believe in yourself, and like I don't know if you're familiar with the term, but it's called imposter syndrome. I mean, I'd heard of it before, but I'd never really messed with it. And I went to a class a few weeks ago, and the lady wasn't in law enforcement at all, but her daughters died in a DUI crash. And she's like, man, I've been teaching at this conference now for 7 or 8 years. And she said, my first time I went to teach here, I about had a panic attack because I'm getting in front of a bunch of law enforcement trainers and I'm teaching them, and I'm not a cop. Like, I don't have a background in anything like that. And she's like, I didn't believe in myself. And basically, it's one of those things that like sat there for like 5 minutes and I was like, I felt that like as a cop, like, like I've never been really until my agency I'm at currently, like none of the other agencies like ever had a SWAT team or anything like that. So like I was never exposed to like, being a door kicker or anything like that on the police level. And a lot of times I get around those SWAT guys and like I feel like I'm like half the cop of them. And then I sit there thinking, I'm like, there's probably 1,000 things that I'm better at them. You know what I'm saying? Like it takes a little bit of everything to make a whole cake.
Yeah, and I think
And I've had to do some reflecting the past few months. Like I've got to believe in myself. I mean, heck, I'm working on my dang doctorate, you know,
yeah,
and like that's an accomplishment, and I'm sitting there thinking, and like all the time, I'm just like second guessing myself. I'm like, I got to stop doing that, like because it's contagious. You start doing that around your buddies, and your buddies start doing it, and then morale plummets, and
yeah,
you're like, oh, here we go again. We're all griping about work, and it's all starts because one guy gets in his own head. And so I'm with you, man. Like when they get out, there's got to be that transition to like, hey, man, we'll be here to support you. We'll help you find a job. Like we'll help you believe in yourself. Like, I mean, because you're in for so long, and then it's just like, all right, sink or swim by yourself.
yeah,
Like,
definitely, for
good
sure.
luck.
And even like I think a lot of veterans do really good at running their own businesses. I feel like I do really good at that, but I also have an exceptional wife that helps me take care of. It keeps me on that structure that I need. You know what I'm saying? And keeps me in that guided way and telling me what I need to do and how I need to do it. But still, I see a lot of veteran owned businesses that just do exceptionally well because, first of all, you're not working for anybody and you get to kind of make your own choices when it comes to decision. You don't, and you still get to be who you were in a sense, if that makes sense. But yeah, and I'm sure like in the law enforcement area, I mean, I think you kind of got out of it for a little while, didn't you? And then, and, and you still have that taste, you know what I'm saying? You still want And a lot of people don't realize that people that are in military or first responders, a lot of those guys genuinely care about taking care of other people. They want to help other people. And it doesn't matter what level it's on. If it's, helping an old lady cross the street or helping someone in a car crash. I mean, my kids know, like, we've traveled the world, and driving that, if there's a crash or something like that, I mean, I'm the first one out, because a lot of times I feel like first responders, us, we're the calm in the storm in that sense. We've been there and done it, and we know how to react to those situations. When you have people that have never been around that environment, they don't. Some people just don't have a. They just think we need to start doing this and that, and
No, they don't handle stress well at all.
yeah, so
And I'll say for everybody listening, like, I got out in law enforcement during COVID. Just, for anybody that's ever worked a 9 to 5 set, ever get paid every 2 weeks job, don't do it during a pandemic and take a fully commissioned job. Terrible time to do it. But as much as I liked selling insurance, I missed the camaraderie. Like, it wasn't the same. And, like, I still talk to some of my friends in law enforcement, but, like, you didn't talk to them as much. And like it wasn't the same. Like, some of my buddies would swing by and say hey every now and then and stuff like that, but it's not the same. And like I had so much freedom to like do my own thing as an insurance agent that like a lot of times I'd be like, there's probably something I could be doing, but like I had so much freedom and no like defined like, hey, you've got to have this done by the end of your shift, like that. I was just like, do 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 do,
yeah,
and it was new and it was terrible. Like as much as I enjoyed selling insurance, like that itself was fine, but like being again, I think they kind of. I'm not gonna name the company, but they have a lot of onboarding stuff that they could do better. But like, sticking somebody that's comes from a law enforcement world in an office by themselves, and giving you like a week long class and then saying, "Here, have at it," is it terrible?
yeah,
Like, I mean, I feel like you should stick them with a more seasoned agent first and say, "Hey, this is how we run our business. This is our day to day process." Like, they didn't do any of that, and so like, you're sitting there by yourself all day, and you're like, man, I sure wish I was out there. Like, I'll give you a prime example. I got put in a terrible area of Tulsa for selling insurance, and I walk outside, and there's a lady that was in a wheelchair that I used to deal with in Catoosa at the Hard Rock all the time, and she's got a lot of mental health issues, and like it doesn't matter who you are, cop, general public, she's yelling, cussing at you. The system's definitely failed her because I mean, she's missing a leg in a wheelchair, like in all honesty, probably can't take very good care of herself.
right,
And I dealt with her one night laying in the middle of the roadway when I was at Catoosa, and I just stopped to help her. And she started cussing me like a dog, and I was like, all right, man, well, at least just get out of the roadway. And, I never thought I'd see her again. And then I just happened to see her outside my insurance agency in Tulsa one day. And here she goes. Like, I'm walking by her, and I purposely, like, walk all the way out in the parking lot around her because I know how she is. And she starts just yelling this like most off the wall stuff as I'm going in my office. I'm kind of like looking around to see if there's anybody else out there, and it's just me. And I'm like, well, I guess she's talking to me. Like, but like, what do? You're a business owner at that point. Like, you can't say anything back. Like,
yeah,
she's clearly needs mental health help and hasn't gotten it. Like, even if you said anything back, like, you're not going to accomplish anything other than making yourself feel a little bit better for 5 seconds. Like, it's not the right thing to do.
yeah,
And, but like, I miss the law enforcement side where, hey, I can at least maybe call and try to get mental health help. Like, I don't got to worry about calling dispatch and then calling an officer out. Like, I could have just done it myself, pick up a radio and said, okay, hey, can you get me somebody with mental health? Or whoever, put her in my car and take her to a mental health place to get checked out. Like, whatever the case may be. You can't do that when you're selling insurance.
right,
And I missed it. And it is one of those things. Like, I didn't know how to function as an adult, which is crazy to me. Thinking back on, I'm like, I didn't know how to function as what I say is the civilian world, the normal 9 to 5 world. I just didn't know how to function. And, I'm used to working when it's dark outside and you don't ever see anybody. And then you're in here, hey, how are you today, sir? Like, it's a different world. And I met a guy a few weeks ago that he runs it's a first responder company, kind of like what you were talking about that they need for veterans. And he helps law enforcement transition out of the law enforcement world into the civilian world when they're ready to retire. And I actually want to bring him down and teach some law. He does like financial planning and stuff like that, and I want to pick his brain because I mean, at some point, like I'm gonna have to, hopefully I've got a while left, but everybody's got a time to where, hey, it's time to retire and get out of law enforcement or EMS or fire. Like I want to be prepared once that time hits that like I don't fail again, like
Yeah,
because it
definitely.
was terrible.
Yeah. And you kind of feel hopeless in a sense, and on that mental health side of things, man, it's one of those things. And I know you guys specifically, I think sometimes the way I look at it is never being in law enforcement, so not understanding that side of things is I feel like sometimes that's neglected, but maybe it's just because of the lack of training or
Hmm.
the lack of compassion. You know what I'm saying? That is definitely one thing that I feel like military teaches you in that sense is compassion for people because you have to deal with so many different people, and one of my biggest struggles, it's kind of funny. One of my biggest struggles was when I came back from Japan after I'd been to Iraq and did all that stuff and been on boats and all that. I came back from Japan where I was working, long days. I mean, I was on night shift. I didn't have a care in the world, just doing my thing out there, probably drinking extremely way more than what I should have been, that type of
Hmm.
stuff. And I was going 90 to nothing there. And I came back to North Carolina and was an instructor where I was working like hey, I mean, we get to work at like 8 o'clock and we'd be done at like 2, and unless we got up and ran or something like that, it's one of those things. So that, that tore me up more than anything. And that's the point where Erica was like, hey, you got to find something to do. I was like, well, crap. The only thing I might know how to do is deliver pizzas. And she's like, well, I seen something about baseball, and you love baseball. So why don't you try umpiring baseball? And, and that's been that truly, that factor in her doing that for me has been my saving grace. And I wholeheartedly mean that. Umpiring baseball, because it gives me an out. It gives me a situation to I have to think about something else, and I have the skin to be an umpire. I feel like I have the hard skin to be an umpire. I went through Marine Corps in Iraq, did those things. Nothing a coach or a player can say to me is going to hurt my feelings at the end of the day.
Well, it's funny you say that because I refereed a lot doing intramural stuff in college, football, basketball, low pitch softball, all the stuff they had umpires or referees for, and you'd have those drunk college kids show up there and just they were brutal if you missed a call.
Yeah.
And I truly laugh about it because everybody laughs at when I say this, but it prepared me to be in law enforcement because like if these people cussing you out all the time, I'm like, dude, I heard that 15 years ago.
Yeah.
Like you ain't hurt my feelings, I promise you that.
And I think a lot of guys like in law enforcement and in military, they don't realize that they're dealing with mental health. They don't realize they're struggling with it, until it's gotten too bad.
Mm-hmm.
And I still deal with it, but I deal with it on a different level. But there, like I said, that is one of the biggest things. And and I would love to have a program to go through law enforcement areas and help teach officers how to deal with, and I just use the military as an example, like how to deal with those type of people, because I strongly believe that there is a low level of training when it comes to dealing. And I get it. I know that everybody says, oh, money is this and money is that, but I think really at the end of the day, if you sit down and you said we can shift money from here to here and make that happen and understand that. And then again, I think if we had a program for people to transition both sides of things, it would
Mm-hmm.
it would definitely, because you can get that aspect and you can learn that kind of stuff. And I could go on for days, and I'm sure you could too, about the mental health side of things. It's just,
Well, I think you hit the nail on the head, and I'll say it because I have been in law enforcement. Guys don't know how to be compassionate. Like it's probably the same way in the military, but in law enforcement, it's very alpha dominated, and you always want to one up your buddy, and you want to be look tough or, act tough in front of everybody. And like, I think that's why a lot of times, like, I don't fit in the law enforcement circle because of that. Like, I don't care to be the like best guy. Like, yeah, I joke around with my buddies, like, hey, I made the best arrest today. Like, while you're over there eating McDonald's, like, yeah, that happens. But like, I've never like went into somewhere and thought I was like better than anybody, or like, hey, I'm the man in charge. Like, that's just not my personality. And it drives me nuts when guys do that. Like, to an extreme. Like, they amp people up, and instead of, talking to them like a person and like, de-escalating situations, instead they escalate them. And thankfully, I will say in the past probably 4 to 5 years, they've really started pushing de-escalation training to a lot of guys. And we actually just hosted one, I don't know, probably 6 months ago. And my last podcast interview was with a gentleman that teaches it full time now. And literally, how you talk to people either amps it up or, de-escalates it back down. Like, it's not saying, oh my God, we're out there hugging criminals, or like, hey, we're not going to hold them accountable. Even if the guy's a criminal, treat them with a little bit of respect. Like, you're gonna catch a lot more with honey than you are with vinegar at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And,
And
you know
it really, you don't know what that dude's been through in that sense, you know. I mean, yeah, in small towns you might know. I mean, you know how it is.
Yep.
But really, you don't know what that dude's been through, or that lady's been through, and dealing with, like you said, dealing with that is a lot of times is that calm, cool approach to things, you know. And like you were talking about, just being that super ego kind of person is like, I tell Erica this all the time, and maybe it's a little bit of salt on my shoulders, but I don't owe anybody in this town anything, or I don't. I've done everything. I've accomplished everything that I feel like I set myself to accomplish. You know what I'm saying? My kids have turned out outstanding. I've graduated with a college degree from the university that I love, and I was in the Marine Corps. I did that. I own my own business. So at some point, I never will understand that. Like you said, is the ego thing. It's like, man, you're not better. You're not really better than that person next to you.
Mm.
Honestly, at the end of the day, just because they're in a situation that you're not, you know, and I know we could go on for hours about that type of stuff. But back to the mental health side is like, you know, I dealt with that a lot when I worked at the state. Is people the biggest thing in the law enforcement side of things is that a lot of these guys that were veterans don't realize that they could get benefits and still be in the law enforcement side of things. You can still be and 100% disabled or whatever and still be a cop and still get basically the best of both worlds, in that sense of, you still get all your medical treatment, everything through the VA, and you're still enjoying that camaraderie. You're still being around, you know, people that you feel that you love and care about. And so that was one of the biggest things when I worked for the state, that I would try to, especially up in the Tulsa Police Department, I'd go up there every once in a while and visit with those guys and say, hey, you come see me because I want to help you get your benefits. And I just was reading an article this morning where the VA has changed and I've talked about this for years, it's drove me crazy. Um, Instead of it being a symptom based medical mental health, it's more of a scenario based mental health. So, okay, we know that you went through trauma, we know that you dealt with this, but how do we help you get through everyday life?
Mm-hmm.
And for the longest time, the VA, it was like, okay, come in here, see a psychiatrist who has never stepped foot in any kind of military base, let alone been in the military, and same thing with you guys. I'm sure they send you these people that have never even knew, most of them, I would say, maybe even have a negative outlook on police officers in that sense. And so you're having to battle that along with what you have going on in your head, and those things, just that part of drives me crazy. Why in the United States are we so negligent against mental health stuff? Like,
Yeah.
Why do we hold
Well,
back so
well,
much?
I'll put it to you this way: the state of Oklahoma every year only requires you to have 2 mental health hours of continuing education every year. Just that, 2 hours. For the longest time, you could get 2 hours just online. Like it wasn't, you sit there and played a video, and it played in the background. You did the little quiz, and you got your hour, and then you watched another one. You're not learning anything to actually deal with mental health issues. It gets better. Well, now they've introduced this 2 hour mandate. I think it's sexual assault investigations and maybe missing persons that you have to do an hour of continuing ed every year, which is great. I actually think that's a great thing. Like, we need to start implementing these other things as refreshers. Don't have a problem with that. The problem is you also now get an hour of mental health with it. So your 2 hours of mental health that you're required, you get it taking those two other mandated classes.
Yeah.
And so there's no push for people to get extra mental health training unless they want to. And luckily, at my agency, it's encouraged. We've got a crisis intervention team. We're actually hosting a training to do peer support training. And so that's great. I would say 95% of the agencies out there don't have that training, and a lot of officers don't want it. And so, like, what do you do if that push isn't there to make them do it? They're not going to do it,
No, no.
and that's what sucks.
Yeah, yeah. And then that's another thing I don't understand is why is it not a mandatory factor? I know, like you said, oh yeah, go on the computer, show that you've done your training, but why is it not a mandatory factor that, and I understand, especially in law enforcement, yeah, it might suck that you have to take your day off to come do that training,
Mm-hmm.
but really, it may save your life and it may keep you out of a situation that you don't want to be in. So I would rather take that day, even if it's, every 3 months, we'll say quarterly type thing. Like, okay, versus being in a situation where now I've got to be in a courtroom and got to be in front of somebody explaining why I did what I did, you know, because you very well could have prevented that. And I'm not saying all cases will be
Yeah.
prevented. We know that.
Yep.
But that training goes a long ways. I mean, there is a reason that the military trains every day. I mean, aviation in the military, especially, these pilots and these crew chiefs and things like that, they get in these planes and they fly every day for a purpose, for a reason. It should be the same way. There should be no reason that you're not training, even on the job. Sometimes there should be no reason that a supervisor shouldn't be trying to train you and ask you questions. Hey, what if you're in this scenario? What, because you see it all the time, guys hanging out and not doing anything. Or where's the supervisors in those situations saying, hey, let's do some kind of scenario class or something. And maybe I'm talking out of line because I've never been in law enforcement, so I don't know how it is. But to me, I feel like that scenario could be there of like, hey, let's kind of reenact this situation, and what would you do in this situation? What if you had this guy come up to you and do this? What would you go through? What would you do?
The good supervisors do. It's just it doesn't happen enough, and I'm not talking bad about the ones who don't, but a lot of times they don't know about that type of training, or that never been exposed to it. And I feel like a lot of guys would be receptive to it if they started pushing that stuff out there. Like, hey, start doing debriefs with your guys after major calls.
Yeah.
Like start, it's like, hey, how do you think this played out? Stuff like that. Like, is there things you could have done better? Is there things we could have done better as a group? Like, hey, this, other shift did this scenario. Like, how would you approach it? Like, there's so many possibilities of like just small things to like, small trainings. Cause I mean, that's what they are. You may not get continuing ed hours for it, but it's still training.
Yeah, and it's keeping you constantly thinking about a situation or a scenario or so. Yeah, I did. Yeah, I agree 100% with that. Is like you said, is just going through those debriefs, which is crazy to me that that doesn't happen. I would think that would be a mandatory scenario of like, hey, at the end of the shift, we have a debrief shift. I mean, I know everybody wants to go home and drop their belt, and of course, that's the way it is, but like I said, it may save your life at some point.
I'll say it. I'm sure there's going to be people that watch this and say, "Well, we do that all the time." I've been in around 3 different departments, and I've never ever been on a shift that consistently did that. Like, yeah, we may talk about the call and like laugh and joke and like, but never in a setting of like, hey, we could do this better, or hey, like, like we could have handled that differently. It just didn't happen on a regular basis and doesn't still happen on a regular basis. And I hope people will start implementing those type of things into their leadership. And another thing is, I don't know if you're familiar with it, but the term coaching, and I'm not talking about like football coaching, but like I'm starting to get into it dealing with like first responders and stuff. As a supervisor, like why are we not coaching our guys like why they're underneath us and saying, "Hey man, where do you want to be 6 months from now? Where do you want to be a year from now? Like let me help guide you towards like the goals like you want to reach. Like let me help you like work towards those type of things." And it's the same, it's the same principle after an officer involved shooting. Like why are we not checking up on these guys on a regular basis? I just had somebody tell me recently that was involved, and when I text them, they're like, "Hey, you're like the only person that's not on the team that checked on me." And I'm like, "Bro, if I was in that, like, I would expect you to check on me and just make sure I'm doing okay." Like at the end of the day, like I just want to know that you guys are doing okay. We don't gotta be best friends,
Yeah.
you
We don't
know?
even have to talk about the situation. Just say,
Yep,
yeah, man, thanks for reaching out. I appreciate it, man. Like, man, because that right there, I'm telling you, will save somebody's life. And and like you said, it's definitely those scenario based situations. I mean, you back to the military side of things, you have guys that are 19, 20 years old and they're leading Marines or leading soldiers into combat situations. And why is that? Because they go through the training and their superiors had the training. But guess what? Just because you have this training doesn't mean that the training can't improve or that there's things that we can't change in our department or in our scenario that maybe fits our situations. You know what I'm saying? Like and improves our department and improves what we have going on. Because I will tell you this wholeheartedly, I believe that if you are doing the right things with inside your department, people on the outside will see that. They will know that. They will know who respects who. They will know how those things and but it's back to the whole ego thing earlier is like I've never understood why people have an issue with someone being better than them. I want you to surpass me. I want you to be better than me. Because if you're doing that and you're trying to do that, it makes me work harder. And I've never understood why guys are so hard nosed to say, oh, well, I mean, I'll use this for an example. I dealt with the situation and I asked a law enforcement officer what the code was. Like show me where it says that I can't do that. Because I'm that kind of guy. I was in the military, I was in aviation. It's not that I'm back talking him but I want to know you're the supervisor where you're supposed to be training your guys and you don't even know what what it actually says or how it's supposed to be read. You're
yep,
just guessing.
yep,
But I guarantee you spent 3 hours of your shift on your cell phone looking at TikTok or whatever, and by no means I'm a law enforcement loving dude. You know what I'm saying? I'm that way, but if you can sit here and honestly say with a straight face that law enforcement and military and everybody's doing it perfect, then you're wrong because it's not. And I don't expect perfect, but what I'm saying is they're doing it to the best of their ability, and a lot of guys aren't doing it, and you can see it. It's reflected within organizations,
yep.
and and
Well, I'll give you a good example. I had a supervisor at a previous agency that was in the Marine Corps, but he was an old school Marine in the '80s. And so from the jump, we have very opposite personalities. Like I'm kind of friendly with everybody. Like, I'm always smiling. Like, hey man, you want a hug? Like,
right,
was not him. And we had a miscommunication the very first shift we ever worked together. Um, and it rubbed me the wrong way because he asked me a question and I answered. And to him, that was me back talking. And I said, well, don't ask me a question if you don't want to answer. And he cussed me out in front of other officers from other agencies. And from that day forward, it wouldn't have mattered whatever he told me. Like, I had no respect for him. Like, moving forward, I had zero respect for him. It wouldn't have mattered like if he would have, you know, been in front of a, pushed me out of a moving car. Like I still wouldn't have respected him. And that's terrible because like deep down inside, for whatever reason, we just didn't click. But one of my good friends and him, we could do the exact same thing, and he would have got a commendation, and I would have got wrote up. But
Yeah.
and what's sad is I tried so many times to get along with him, and I just couldn't do it. And I think he took it as, you know, he wanted me to, if he told me to do something, just to do it, and not think about it. And that's not my personality. Like I want, like if I mess up, tell me I mess up, but tell me why I messed up. Show me how to fix that for next time.
Absolutely.
And it's not me being disrespectful or like trying to show you up. Like, it's just, I need to know how my brain operates. Like, I need to know how I messed up and how I can fix that.
So let me ask you something. Kind of in some of the departments you've been in, do you guys do like quarterly like evals on, like your supervisor will give you an eval, like legitimate, like sit down in a chair, say, hey, because like when I was in the Marine Corps, we did fit reps and stuff like that and pros and cons, and we would set our Marines down and say, hey, you did this crappy this last 3 months, and you did this great the last 3 months, or
So the first agency that I worked at, which they maybe did one once a year, and it was very informal. I mean, hey, do better here, and they might do vehicle inspections like 3 or 4 times a year. And I'll never forget, I got in trouble one time and threatened to get wrote up because my door jamb was dirty, and it was actually like my first vehicle inspection ever. So like, my personality type was like, I don't look at the door jamb. Like I just, to this day, like I can clean my patrol car out and I'll never wipe down the door jamb just because, like, in my mind, like, I don't care about the door jamb, like, but to people that are like militaristic or like, very anal about that type of stuff, they notice those small details that I just don't. Instead of just saying, hey, Brent, like, next time, like, wipe that down. Like, I got threatened to get rode up and I'm like, man, really, dude? Like you're threatening to write me up, which is going to be in my file over a door jamb being dirty. Like, are you kidding me? And then the next agency I went to, I would say we did them once a year also. But we were supposed to do them, I think, a couple times a year, but they really didn't. And where I'm at now, they do them once a year. But I mean, I definitely think that like they probably should be done quarterly, if not at minimum twice a year, just to say, hey, man, this is where you're at right now. Like, this is where you need to work at and get better. This is what you're doing very well. Because you know as well as I do, yes, some people are going to need corrective action, but a lot of times it's just people need to be motivated to do better.
yeah,
And if you don't motivate them and tell them they're doing wrong, they're just going to keep doing the same thing over and over again.
noticing that they're not doing, like you said, the door jam. Maybe
Yeah.
that's something you don't notice or care about
Yeah.
at the end of the day. But if you, and that's the thing is like, man, I always preach this to people, is that you, there's so much to being a leader that people just because you make more money than somebody doesn't make you a leader. It's managing people, and that means this guy over here, Travis, might do something completely different than the way Brent does things. So you, as the supervisor and the leader, have to learn how to approach these situations, and learn how to talk to this person and say, hey, you know, do I think you could improve? And a lot of people can't deal with corrective criticism. And that's another thing that drives me crazy is like, okay, it's a self-evaluation. Hey, he's telling me, because I might not notice it. It's funny because now there's so much video and stuff like that with like when we're umpiring. I will, every game that I work, I will go home and I will watch and I will correct myself on things that I didn't do right. You know,
Mm-hmm.
nobody else in the stadium, maybe the other umpire might notice, but that's part of it, and that's because I had those leaders in my life that said, "Hey, we need to do things this way and learn how to do things this way." And the evaluations to me is very serious evaluations, not like you said, not just a check mark. Like let's sit down and say, "Hey," and it don't have to be. It can be 30 minutes in a guy's shift. You know what I'm saying? You're
Yeah.
not taking it. It
Yeah.
don't. You're not taking a lot of time away from somebody, and look, hey, look, day crew, we're doing night cruise evaluations, and then we'll do you guys as after type thing. You know what I'm saying? Or we'll do night cruise. Say it's going to take 30 minutes. We need you guys to cover for 30 minutes so we can get these done, and then
Yeah.
just
And I'm a firm believer. Eval sheets are great because it gives you a baseline. But when you're evaluating somebody, you really have to go beyond that basic evaluation, or you're not doing your people a service. Because you got to think, man, like the whole old way of it's my way or the highway, like that's done. It's over with. Like
yeah.
as a supervisor, you have to be able to. If you've got 5 people on your shift, you have to be able to lead 5 different personalities that may be into 5 different things, that may think about things differently. Like you've got to be able to understand and connect with those people, because if you don't connect with them, they're just going to do whatever they want.
And how many times did you have a supervisor get in a car with you, a, a patrol car, and go with you for, an hour and a half of your shift? And I know in smaller towns you might not have nothing in an hour and a half.
Mm-hmm.
But how many times did you have someone get in the car with you and go do that, and just watch and see and say, hey man, have you ever thought about doing it this way? Have you ever thought about asking that question this way?
The only time it ever happened was when I was in field training at each agency. And after that, it didn't really happen. And it's almost to the point they think you should be able to just handle everything by yourself. And like, a lot of leaders are hands off. They don't want conflict. They don't want to, tell you the bad things you're doing because you're going to get mad at them. You've got to correct your people because, like, if you don't, like, they're just going to do whatever they want. There's got to be some structure, but you also have to realize that, like, hey, if I've got to correct them, give them some positive reinforcement of the things they're doing good,
Absolutely.
and build that confidence back up and say, all right, man, hey, listen, like, you haven't stopped a car in 3 weeks. Like, I'm not asking you to go out there and stop 20 cars a day or write 20 tickets, but like, be a little bit proactive. Like, go somewhere where that people see you, or hey, we're getting a lot of break-ins there. Stop a car or two, like, just so that people can see your scene. The rest of your shift, like, go do whatever you want. But like, at least make an effort to be out there in public. But hey, by the way, like, I really appreciate you making sure your reports are done on time. Like, you're writing great reports. Like, people are getting prosecuted for when you do take you these reports.
Yeah,
Simple. It's simple as that.
and in your guys' world, that's probably very, very important right there. Is like, okay, I wrote this report. When they go to court, we know that it's going to stick. Because really, at the end of the day, you want that. You want it to stick because you want them to learn their lesson. Now, of course, we all know some people just don't learn their lesson, but you want that people. And like you said, presence is everything. Remember back when we were in school and you go to Tahlequah, remember what town you would automatically slow down.
Yep,
And I
Holbert.
still to this day, and I haven't seen a cop in Holbert. And if there's any on here, then don't get us. But I haven't seen a cop. I go through there quite often. But back in our day, you knew not to go and speed through Holbert because why?
It was a speed trap.
They was
Yep.
gonna pull your butt over. And I'm not saying that you need to be a speed trap, but what I'm saying, presence matters every time. Go out here on Highway 69 and where the going north and south there, those truckers, because why? And I know that's a big debate of who owns that and who should run that and do that. But at the end of the day, I guarantee you, if you would spend a week pulling over people in that area, and truckers especially, guess what? Those truckers get on there and they talk, and they know, hey, if you go through Wagner area on 69, you better slow your butt down, and it'll last for a long time, and then just do it again. And when you feel like it might be wearing off a little bit, then hey, pop up again. You don't have to,
Yep.
and it
Go
may
do.
be.
And that's the same thing. Same thing with speeders. Semis. If you're getting houses or cars broke into in a certain area of town, like, go over there and stop. People that are out 2, 3 o'clock in the morning or on a bicycle with no lights. Like, go out there, because at night you're going to see them red and blues from a ways away. Dogs bark. Like, people are going to see you out there. Doesn't matter what time of day it is. But like, let people see that you're out working in these neighborhoods also and doing stuff, because that's what, at the end of the day, they want you to see that you're out there working. Like, and so I'm with you wholeheartedly. Like, it takes a little bit of effort and a little bit of time, but that's what we get paid to do.
But and if supervisors don't do that, then guys are not going to learn that. So when they become supervisors out of necessity, let's say that, I know that happens, then what are they going to do? The same thing that you did. They're not going to, it's just going to continue to happen.
Yep. And I'll never forget this. This guy ended up being one of my favorite supervisors ever. But when I was trying to leave my first agency and go to my second one, I met a couple guys from that agency. One was the supervisor I ended up really not caring for, but the other one there was probably one of my favorite supervisors ever. But I'll never forget the first impression I got from them. I was like, "Hey guys, like I put in for your agency. Like I really would like to come up there and work for you guys, and explaining to them an eager young cop, like, hey," and they just kind of looked at me and were like, "Oh, that's cool," and just like walked off. Like, guys, you're representing that agency. Like, even if you freaking hate it there, and trust me, I've worked at some places I didn't really care for at the end of the day. Like, at least say, hey, man, like, that's a good place to get some experience. Like, like, don't be a negative outward, because you're a representative of the agency. Don't drag them through the mud. Even if it's the world's worst place, like, there's something positive in there somewhere. Like, say, hey, man, like, they at least let me, like, stop cars. Like, whatever it is. Like, hey, man, like, they let us work. I never forget that, because what's funny is, like I said, I ended up being one of my favorite supervisors ever when I got to know him and actually got on there. But like the first time I met him, I'm like, really, dude? Like, you're not even like, you got somebody wanting to come to work at your agency and you just totally blew him off like I was a nobody,
Yeah.
And I still give him a hard time about that to this day, but like, it's true. People will act how they're trained,
Yep.
and that's all they remember is, well, that's how I was trained. And then those bad habits that started 30, 25, 30 years ago have continued on through several generations of cops, soldiers, EMTs, firefighters, and it just drags out, and it's like a vicious cycle of, when will this end?
Yeah.
And that's the one thing I love about my current agency is they treat our people like great for the most part. Like, I don't have anything bad to, like, I left for 6 months, ran a police academy, and they called me and said, hey, would you like the job back? And like, I'm grateful that they offered me a job back, because they actually care about their people. Is it perfect? Absolutely not. There's no perfect place in this world. But at the end of the day, like, people above me, in pay grade, hey Brent, how's your day going? Like, they acknowledge you. They'll walk by and say, hey, how's work been this week? Like, it doesn't happen in other agencies. And like, to people that are of just your general officer, like, that makes a difference.
Yeah.
Like that admin's like, hey man, how's your week going? Hey man, like, how's your family? Like, stuff like that. And it takes 30 seconds.
Yeah.
You know?
What does it hurt? And I know we all we get in scenarios where we're busy lives, but man, like you said, it's just one of those things that like just that man, the leadership part of things is just people do not understand being a true leader. You know what I'm saying? Like it's not a cakewalk. It's not easy. It's not. And when you ask your younger people that are around you, and you say, "Hey, how's it going?" What even if you say, "Hey, what do you think we could have done better this week? What could we have as a squad or a unit or what could we have done better this week?" Oh man, I think we could have went and did some bowling or something to get you learn from those things. What because that especially with younger officers, I'm sure, just like in the military, you learn from those things, and those you gain people's respect through that. And
Yep.
and people automatically just think that you're like you said with that guy, that Marine earlier, like, you got to respect me. Well, no, not really. What have you done to show me that in that sense? Yeah, I'm going to respect you because of maybe the rank you wear. I'm going to respect you because of that. But what have you shown me to make me want to be like you, emulate you? That.
I'll never forget, later on, a couple years down the road, he got promoted to captain. He was over the patrol division guys, and they were going to make me a corporal, and he's like, "Well, I just want you to know, like, I don't think you're ready for corporal." And I started laughing. He's like, "Well, what's funny about that?" And I said, "Well, I don't think you're ready for captain, but here we are." And oh, you could just see the blood boiling. But like, if you're gonna say that and like,
Yeah.
be a dick to me, like I'm gonna be a dick back to you. And
Yeah.
and if he's listening and he hears this, let's bury the hatchet. Like, we didn't get along for the longest time. Doesn't mean I hate you forever. Like, if you want to call up and say, "Hey, man, I was a dick to you a lot," I would accept your apology, and I would apologize for me probably coming back at you and handling things inappropriately before too. I'm sure I did. I'm not perfect.
Right. Yeah.
But life's too short to hold these grudges. But like, if you're not willing to come off that either, like, dude, I'm not gonna go on my way to apologize to you either. Like, you're the one that started all this. Like, and like I said, I tried to get along with them for so long, but it was just like oil and water. We weren't mixing.
I trust me, I dealt with that, and man, it was tough sometimes in the Marine Corps dealing with guys that just thought that they. And I know, I mean, and my wife will tell you every day that I'm an asshole,
Yeah.
and I know I am. You know what I'm saying? And I know there's guys that had to deal with that, but I truly feel like when I left the Marine Corps, I left my younger Marines with good, positive feedback from about me. You know what I'm saying? Like, yeah, I'm sure there was somebody that talked crap, which is whatever. It don't bother me. But what I'm getting at is that I left that impression, just like this person left that type of impression in you as a young officer. You know what I'm saying? Like, I never can understand the whole, oh, we gotta, you gotta respect me because I'm so and so. Well,
Yeah. No, I don't.
yeah, no, I don't. So, and like you said, it's one of those things that I'll forgive you, dude. Like I understand, that you come to me today, but the thing is that you won't come confront me because you were probably in the wrong at
Yep.
the end of the day. So,
Yep. And like I said, I've tried to make those overtures before. Like, they were rejected. So, like, at this point, like, dude, if you don't want to, that's on you.
yeah.
But don't expect me to sit there and say, "Man, we're best friends." Like, like, it is what it is.
And he doesn't even realize, or people don't even realize that if he would have came to you and said, "Man, congrats on getting promoted to corporal, man. That's good job. I'm glad you're working hard and doing that." You know what? That would have probably done
One
increase.
1,000% it would have.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying. But
Or like, "Hey, you're going to be a corporal. Let me show you some things like how to be a better leader."
yeah,
Like,
but really, probably at the end of the day, he probably didn't know how to be a leader. You know what
oh,
I'm
he
saying?
1,000% did not.
You
He
know what
did
I'm saying?
not.
So, and I say this all the time: just because you were a Marine, and I use Marine because I was a Marine, just
Yeah.
because you're a Marine, don't mean you're a
Yep.
leader. At the end of the day,
Yep.
it's just there's.
Yep. Well, Travis, how about this? You made mention of it earlier. I'll work with you if you think that we could get together over the next year, 6 months to a year. We could work on a class about help on how to interact with people in mental health crises. Because I mean, there's definitely improvement needed.
Yeah, definitely, man. I definitely would love to do that and be a part of that because and I'd feel honored to work with you in that situation because, man, I feel like that truly can make a huge impact on, and we're on a law enforcement podcast, so I think that can make an impact in that environment. And like I said, sometimes it's not about the person on the other side; it's about you and keeping you safe at night, so
Yep.
you can go home to your family.
Yep.
Because we all know dealing with mental health people, you never know what that scenario is going to turn into and how quickly it'll turn around. And especially dealing with veterans, man. Veterans hold a different. I say this: mental health is mental health, but veterans have that different capacity because, like you said earlier, if you come up to me and you got an attitude, and especially if you're a younger officer in that sense, and you come up to me and I'm going through something, you don't know where. You know what I'm saying?
Yep. You're
So
tuned out instantly. You lose your credibility when you do that as an officer. You know what I'm saying? Like, because people are like, okay, if you're gonna start out here, like, I always tell people, you can start out here and work your way back down, but like, you can't start here and then just go. Like, it's not gonna work. Like,
no.
because I mean, you can start out here and work your way up, but it's if you start out here, you're not coming back down. You lost that credibility.
Yeah, no way, no how.
Well, Travis, I won't tie you up. I'm truly happy to, like I said, work with you on that because this job ain't perfect. There's always room for improvement, and if we can help some veterans and people just in general with mental health stuff, like, let's do it. Like that's what we're here to do, you know?
Yeah, definitely. And I'd love to, just one kind of last thing is the VA system, man. I'm pretty knowledgeable with that, and if I'm not, I have an outstanding leader that I worked with at ODVA, Brian Gibson. I'll throw him out there. He was a Marine, and that dude he's great, man. And if I can't get the answer, I know he will.
And guys, if for whatever reason, I'm sure Travis is on Facebook. I know he is. But if you can't find him, reach out to me, and I can get you in contact with Travis. And like, I'm sure if he doesn't have the answer, he can get you in contact with somebody that does,
Yeah,
because
so
we'll give him the help.
I don't do the Facebook. I just use that messenger thing on there, but I don't do the Facebook thing. But I just try to stay away from it because it for other reasons. Definitely reach out, and if you got any questions, Brent can get a hold of me, or or my business. You can call my business, and I will be more than happy to answer any questions that
Yeah,
need to be answered with it.
absolutely. Well, Travis, thanks again. I appreciate it.
Yeah, man, I appreciate you having me on, and thanks for everything, man. And it was truly good talking to you. So,
You as well. We'll stay in touch.
all right, man, take care.
See ya.